Hi, welcome to the channel. Today we'll build a Tic Tac Toe program in Python. Let's start. So the first thing we have to do is to draw the grid, that 3 by 3 grid. So for that we'll just create a function known as draw, and in that we'll just print out space. So the structure of our numbers would be similar to the keypad on the right side of almost every keyboard, right? So okay. Okay, so this is done. So now we can try to see how this draw function draws a grid. Yeah, so this looks cool. So now the next thing we have to do is to take the user input, right? So for that we can simply create a variable user, and we can take input and say enter your choice. In bracket we can write from 1 to 9, and after taking the user input we have to update these values inside the grid. So for that we need to create a variable that will store these values, and as user and computer change, like place their choices, we have to change the that variable. So for that I'll create a variable known as state that would be a list of lists, or like array of array, and initially it would have the values as the values inside this grid, right? And so now here we will use f strings to give the values from the state variable instead of these hard coded values. So yeah, let's do that. Yeah, so now this is done. So now we can see the draw function has to be called first. Yeah, so now we'll see if the grid is being drawn properly or not. So just we'll enter. Yeah, so yeah, the grid is still being drawn perfectly. So now the next thing we have to do is to update the state variable according to the user input. So for that we'll create another function that will be called as update state, and that would take two parameters. First would be the grid number, like the 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 number, and the second parameter would be the symbol that has to be updated it with. Like if we have to update the seventh grid number with x, so the first argument would be 7 and the second argument would be the capital X, right? So first thing what we can do is to create two variables known as user, that could be called as x, and comp, that means computer, that can be called as o, right? And before printing the grid we can also print that what x and o means. User equals to x, and comp equals to o, right? So now we'll write the logic to update the state according to the grid number. To update the state, we need two indices, like this first index that we can call as I, and the second one we can call as j. So we need I and j for to update the state. So if we look at the pattern, that if the grid number is greater than 6, say 7 8 or 9, for all those the ith index is always 0, right? And the jth index is grid number minus 7. So if the grid number is 7, the jth number is 0, 7 minus 7 0. And if grid number is 8, 8 minus 7 is 1, and so on. And similarly, if we look at the values where the grid number is less than 4, like for the last grid, the ith index is always 2, and the jth index is the grid number minus 1. And so for the middle one, it is the ith index is always 1, and the jth index is grid number minus 4, right? So now the first thing we have to do is to ensure that grid number is an integer. So we'll typecast it into grid number. And then as already discussed, if the grid number is greater than 6, I comma j, so so we should globally declare these values as I and j, and we will initialize it by none and none. So now the ith j will be ith index is 0 and jth index is grid number minus 7. Fine. Else if grid number is less than 4, then I comma j would be equals to 2 comma grid number minus 1. And lf, like we can do it else only. Else I comma j equals to 1 comma grid number minus 4. Right. So now we got the grid number, and we will update the state variable accordingly, I and j. So yeah, so I had made the ith comma jth index of the state variable as the symbol that has been assigned to us. So we can test this function by calling update state, and the grid number would be grid number, and grid number equals to user, and symbol equals to users. Fine. And then we can call the draw function again to see if the values have been assigned properly or not. Right. So now if I enter 5, so the fifth grid number value has been changed to uh, x. And similarly, if I, let's say, 2 3, now the third index. So our update state function is working fine. So now we can try to make the user input a bit more robust. Let's say I enter the value 12, right? So it is showing an error, right? And similarly, if I enter, let's say, some text, non-integer value, so that also throws an error. So what we will do is if the update state function is successful, we would return here true. Like if like if the state has been changed successfully, we'll return as true, right? And if some error occurs or something is wrong with the grid number, or something is wrong, then we will return false. And according to whether the update state returns true or false, we will do like show the error messages and all those things over here, right? So the first thing we have to check is if the grid number is an integer, right? So for that, what we will do is if str, so if the grid number is not an integer, we would return false dot is uh, digit. If it is not a digit, I would just return false. Fine. So after this, we had ensured that it is a digit. So now what we can, like after typecasting it to the integer, we can check if So if the grid number is less than 1 or greater than 9, we have to return false, because it is an invalid input, right? So what we can check is, if grid number is less than 1 or grid number is greater than 9, we can simply return false. Okay, fine. So these two things have been handled. So apart from these two, like error conditions, we would also need to check one more error condition. For that, we have to look at the real gameplay. The real gameplay would be an infinite loop where it would continuously ask for the user input, then the computer would enter an input, and so on. So in that, one error we can encounter is, let's say first time I entered 6 and another time also I entered 6. So we have to add a check to see if the that grid number is already populated or not. So before assigning it, we can check if the state ij is already an alphabet. We can simply return false, that we cannot change because it is already occupied basically. So if state I j dot is alpha, right? We can simply return false. So now we are returning the value, the true and false here. So we have to keep asking user for the input unless he or she enters the correct input, right? So for that, what we can simply do is, we can call the while update function. So while update state is not successful, we'll continuously ask a user for the input, right? So the first thing we can do is invalid choice, and then we can again ask for enter your choice from 1 to 9. Oh, yeah. So I think this should work. Let's see how this goes. Fine. So let's say I pick 6. It says, yeah. So if I press 6 again, it says invalid choice. If I, let's say 12, it again says invalid choice. If I say 1, sorry about that. Yeah, it successfully populated this as 1, and so on. If I do -1, it also says invalid choice. Fine. So our error handling for this is completed for the user, right? So now, so the next thing what we can do is, we have to get the computer's choice. Like for now, that would be a random choice. So to get the random value from 1 to 9, what we can do is, we can use the random function, right? And that would give us random dot rand int, and we'll pass in 1 and 9. So this would give us a number between 1 and 9, including 1 and 9. uh, yeah. So that's what we want, and yeah, it's fine. So we can again, using the same logic, like if the uh, computer randomly selects a value that is already been occupied, so it would return false, right? So we can check for that in a similar manner as we checked for uh, the user input, right? So symbol equals com, and yeah, we can do com equals the same value again and again, random input. Fine. So yeah, so now it let's see how this works. If I select 9, the computer chose 2, right? If I select say 7, the computer chose 5, and if I select 3, so basically this is randomly being populated. So now if you see, the problem is that inside an infinite loop, the computer is again and again trying to generate a random number between 1 and 9 that is not occupied. But the problem here was that after I selected 6, all the numbers were already occupied. So we need to check that total number of chances at max can be 9, right? So for that, we will just create a global variable, total chances equals to 0. So now we have to create a function that would check if the game is over or not, right? So that will check the values you using this total chance function. But yeah, so is game over, right? And so if total chances are greater than equals to 9, return true, and else return false, right? So so before asking the user for input, we can check if is game over. We can simply break the loop, and similarly before getting the random int from the computer, we can check is game over, and we if it is over we can simply break the loop. So let's check it again. If it still goes into the infinite loop, 6, 5, 3, 2, and now I have to enter 4. Let's say if it goes into an infinite loop or not. Okay, I'm sorry about that. So we are not updating the total chances variable anywhere. So for that, just after assigning the state variable, we have to do it uh, total chances plus equals to 1. So since we are using the global variable, we are changing the global variable, so we have to declare the global variable uh, at the top of the function. And I think now it's true. Yeah, fine. Let's see if now it goes into an infinite loop or not. No, so now if I press 5, it shouldn't go into an infinite loop and break out of the loop. Yeah, it works fine. So the next thing we have to see is to check if someone has already won the game. Like here, after I got these three x's in a row, it like in a column, it shouldn't have asked for another input, and simply said that the user won. So for that, we can create another function. We can call it as def get winner, right? And so for that we can create a for loop that will iterate from 0 to 2, and in that loop we can check for all the rows, like that loop would iterate 3 times, right? So so in that loop, parallelly we can check if all the elements in a row are of same character, like are they equal, and also in that loop we can check if all the elements in a column are of same character, are either x or o, or any like same character basically. So for that, as I said, we can create a loop. If all the elements in a row are equal, then simply return state I 0. So so in this loop we have checked for these conditions. If either all rows or columns are of same character or not, right? So after, so now we have to check for the diagonals. So diagonals can have only two conditions. So we will check them individually. So by default, if there is no return statement, the function returns none value. So we can live with that. So now inside the is game over function, we can check if there is a winner for that matter. So we can create a winner function is get winner, right? And if winner equals user, we can simply print the statement that user wins, and we can return true, right? If winner equals com, we can print or user lost, and return as true because the game has been over, right? And yeah, I think this is fine. So it would break in here. Yeah, let's see how this works. Yeah, user wins. So similarly, if I just try to lose, and let's see if somehow computer can win. Yeah, oh, yeah. So here the computer won. Yeah, so this is all. So one tiny little thing that can make the our experience better can be to clear the screen before drawing the grid. So for that we will just import OS module, and before printing this we will do os.system. So to make it compatible with Linux as well as Windows, we will use clear CLS or clear, like either of them would work, right? So yeah, so before printing the grid, it cleared the screen, right? So if I do 6, now I chose this, you computer chose this, I choose this. If I choose 5, user wins, and yeah, I won. Yeah, so there is one issue that before exiting, it doesn't draws the grid properly. So to fix that, what we can do is before printing the user wins message or computer loss message, we can call the draw function to draw the grid before to draw the new grid before uh, saying if the user won or someone else won. Oh, it occupied. So I 4. If I just do 4, yeah. So now it drew the grid properly, and it showed the message user wins. So that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.